This is Openmike, and we are back with the third segment of our program. We were just wrapping up on the position in Choiseul, but what I think has to be done based on the technical advice which I got last week from an individual who actually worked for the Japanese people. A tape has been prepared of the difficulties in Choiseul, and it is our intention to pass this tape over to the Ministry of Agriculture, and it should be forwarded to the Japanese embassy in Trinidad, which is responsible for the islands, and to alert them of what is going on. And I have no doubt whatsoever that the appropriate action will be taken, because the Japanese folk are very responsible people, and there is no way at all that they will allow this situation to continue, because it is very, very unacceptable for the people in Choiseul, and also for the fishermen who are going through a very difficult time. Now, we're going to jump to another part of our program concerning the fact that fishermen some fishermen continue to ignore the instructions from the Ministry of Agriculture as not taking away the certain species during the spawning periods. I posed a question to Mr. Walters, who is familiar because he's president of the Fishermen's Association, and he indicated that there are one or two lawbreakers, but by and large, the instructions are followed very closely. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think we spent many years educating our fishermen on protected species, sublegal sizes of lobster and conch and turtles, the closed seasons. We did a lot of work with reef fishes and fish pots and the mesh sizes and the biodegradable panels. I think our fishermen are well educated on that, but like I say, from time to time you get
some
the individual lawbreaker. Yeah.
Now,
Horace,
yeah.
It's not widespread.
What I wanted, you raised an important point a while ago, because just recently on the news, I saw some fishermen, I think it was in the Prala area, complaining bitterly about people raising their pots. And it's very disheartening, because when somebody has spent their money and somebody comes and they go out and they find a fish good, it's really not acceptable. But you indicated something to me which I was never aware of. I would like you to explain to the St. Lucian public what you just told me about the pop-ups.
Yeah. Well, again, this is a very old, when I say very old, in my time, we introduced the pop-up marker. It is a device where you would, and at one time we used bamboo to mark where you had a fish pot. But with pot theft at that time being prevalent, we identified a pop-up which we picked up from the U.S. Virgin Islands, somewhere up north, and we introduced the pop-up. It's a pop-up marker where you'd set your pot and it would be below the surface, and you would get a pop-up that would pop up 72 hours later. So you'd set your pot on Monday morning and you'd go back on Wednesday morning, 72 hours later, and you'd know where you set your pot, and it would pop up and you would raise your pot. And that kept pot thieves away, because they didn't know.
Yeah.
So you would know when.
Has it helped or has it worked?
I think it did help, but I cannot be
100%
sure what's happening now.
Yeah.
But I don't know that pot theft is as prevalent now as it used to be. Because again, we did introduce a pot registration, so your pots would have your marks on them. And if somebody stole your pot and they were caught with it,
yeah, well, that's
you would
something
know.
else. But you know, St. Lucia, what we would like to do is to pass some information to the fishing folks in the area that seem to have that difficulty where other people are lifting their pots before they come. So remember, there's something called a pop-up. Maybe you should contact the Fisheries Association or the Ministry of Agriculture, and they will assist you. And we'd be very pleased to know from you. Let us know the results of it, and if it's not working, then we could try to do something else as far as that is concerned. Because originally, before I was told by Mr. Walters about the pop-up situation, I thought that what should have been done is that they should have had a periodic surveillance, but then that's costly, and at this time, with the situation as it is, economic, it may not be convenient or appropriate for the government to follow such a device. But we are concerned, at least I am very concerned when I hear these things, because being a business person, I know what it is to make an investment and somebody just come behind and steal the fish. So we will follow that up a bit further, and on one of our other shows we can advise you really what is going on. Another thing which we have, which I've learned today from Mr. Walters, is the fact that to save the fishermen money, there's something called a FAD, which Mr. Walters explained to me, which exists, which help fishermen to find the fish faster than normal. And I'll let Mr. Walters explain that.
Again, this is what we call a fish aggregating device. And we learned of this many, many years ago from the Pacific Islands, where you establish a FAD, this fish aggregating device, which attracts fish. To begin with, you would establish this facility, this FAD, and it would have an accumulation of marine algae, which would bring small fishes to feed, and then you'd have the larger fishes coming and staying there. So when we started establishing FADs, fishermen no longer had to go further afield at sea looking for fish, looking for the where the fish was. They can go directly to the FAD and fish around it. And that I know is working fairly well.
And that still exists today?
Very, very well. I mean, we have fishermen in Castries who are catching a lot of fish around the FADs. And I know there is a Japanese project to establish FADs along the west coast from Ancillary to Laborie. Mm-hmm. And I think the last FAD was established a couple of weeks ago.
How far out to sea?
Oh, a couple miles, a few miles where the fish is.
Is it in the shipping lanes?
That is a possibility. That is true, because the fisheries department has to inform SLASPA, so it can be put on the chart so the ships know where they are and they can avoid them. But these FADs are working and they're catching a lot of fish.
Well, this is wonderful news. Yeah, yeah. You know, as you said that about the FADs, I was told only recently, you know, we've been receiving an abundance of seaweed in the last couple of years, more than usual. I don't know what the reason is for it, but I was told by some fishermen that, for instance, say between Martinique and St. Lucia, there were big areas of seaweed, and when there was quite a bit of fish under that seaweed. Why is that?
Well, what we've seen around the island is the sargassum weed. Mm-hmm. That comes from the Sargasso Sea, and I've been reading a little bit that it might be due to climate change. Mm-hmm. You have a warming of the seawater, which can cause algal blooms. You have a lot of this growing, and of course you have hurricane weather with upwellings. So this weed ends up, and once it gets to our region, the Gulf Stream sends it down our way. Mm-hmm. What it does, it packs up and it keeps a lot of juvenile fish mm-hmm. in there. So mm-hmm. these fish can't be free to move and grow.
I
so
see.
They don't
what,
put
within the weed itself?
Yeah, within, yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the dolphin we've been catching have not been very big. Uh-huh. Now we're getting larger dolphins because the weed is gone. But it's something that we've seen for many years. It's something.
But you've been in the fishing industry or associated with it for quite some time. Would you say in the last 5 or 6 years there's more seaweed than normal?
Well, I would think so. This year I saw a lot of this sargassum weed, much more than I've seen before. And again, what's been talked about is climate change.
Yeah.
I mean,
St. Lucia, this is Openmike. We have now reached the third end of our third segment, and we'll be right back.